Growing up, really my mother's Puerto Rican culture kind of was the dominant culture of our household. And really being able to spend a lot of time learning about Puerto Rico by physically being there. My great-grandmother, she gave birth, as far as I know, to 14 children. They lived on a farm they had a farm in rural Puerto Rico. So life was hard, but it was hard because of the policies of the United States. The United States' policies were policies of stricture. They were policies of limitation. Part of it was to squeeze people off land and into factories. There wasn't a lot of choice in terms of access to reproduction. So any of the kind of contraceptives that were available in the United States in the 30s weren't available to women at all in Puerto Rico. It's not like they went in and they were like, let's give childcare to women so they could work. You know, it's like engineering the options. They weren't handing out, some of the earliest forms of contraception. They were offering or enacting sterilization. The Catholic Church on the island was certainly very active in trying to prevent access to contraception in any way. So sterilization became, for some women, the only option because those were the clinics that were set up. You can see in some of the records, it wasn't understood by every woman, I think, that sterilization was a permanent procedure. And it was kind of described in some things you can read as birth control, which is obviously not what it is. There were policies that upon the second or third birth, the woman was sterilized. And in order to access care, they had to consent. There's records of women having to consent to sterilization in order to be able to deliver their child in the hospital. There's a lot of power dynamics there when you're young and you're trying to make a living and you see the poverty of your family, and this is offered as a way to have some control over your life. But I don't think, like when we think about what informed consent looks like, I don't think that that was really largely at play. The incredibly high number of women who were sterilized is just kind of staggering to think about. Angelina, she probably had la operación, right? She didn't have children. She was the first one who came. She was the one who was most embedded in factory work. I think she probably was sterilized because she was in factory work. She came here on her own. I think she likely didn't know it was a permanent procedure. So my mother, after she had me, she opted for sterilization. And she was like, la operación, right? That's how it was known, the operation. Like I had it. It's just something that you did. I remember in that conversation with my mother, her even saying that the tubal ligation she had, she could have reversed it to have children. So there's still percolated a belief that la operación was not something permanent. It's really pretty clear that the desire for population control was at play. And the view was that Puerto Ricans just had too many children. Population control was a way to ensure that Puerto Ricans couldn't, demand too much from the United States in terms of, the financial relationship that existed. What's been interesting too over the last few years for me is to really understand the complexity of it. There's like the forced sterilization. There's the sterilization that happened because there was no other option. Women had no option, but they took an option because they needed to control their reproduction. There's a community that is sort of outside San Juan and became kind of the locus for where the birth control pill was tested without consent. Informed consent, which is what we, pride in any kind of clinical trials. So there was no informed consent. But it was the trial that led then to the mass distribution of the pill in the United States. I made the decision long ago to not take birth control. It became layered with all of these reverberations and residue of the process of colonization of Puerto Rico. It's important to know how the imperialist project of the United States has been exerted through the bodies of women in Puerto Rico and still is.
Thank you for watching this story from our online docuseries Stand Up, Speak Out, the personal politics of women's rights. Please like and subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when a new video is up. Share with your friends. Leave us a comment with your reaction to the story. All this helps us to reach more people. Visit our website, bcvoices.org, to learn more and support our work on our next episode.